All right, hello and welcome back. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite system and network attacker. And in today's video, we're actually not going to go through anything with tryhackme. We're going to go through a very simple series of commands for enumerating Active Directory with PowerShell. If you're working in large enterprise security environments or system analyst environments, it's probably not going to be easy for you to enumerate not PowerShell, excuse me, Active Directory through the GUI like this, right? So there's going to be probably multiple forests, and then there's probably going to be multiple organizational units and then multiple departments within those units, and then there's probably going to be thousands of employees. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to do it through this interface if you want to enumerate what's going on inside that organization or pull somebody's information or a department, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into enumerating Active Directory with PowerShell. And before I dive deep into the content of this video, as always, it would mean the world to me, and it would be quite a humbling experience if you could like, subscribe, turn on notification bell, and even drop a comment. All of those activities actually help the YouTube algorithm to find this channel and give us a little bit more reach so that we can expand the community and help other people just like yourself who want to become cybersecurity analysts or penetration testers or ethical hackers, so on and so forth. And there's the more important note from that is that the big benefit if you subscribe and turn on the notification is that you'll actually get notified the next time a video comes out, and that will help you along your path for cybersecurity analyst or penetration tester or ethical hacker. So if you're studying to become any one of those things, then this will actually directly help you. This channel will directly help you in your path and even down your career path. So it ends up being a win-win for the both of us, and it would just mean the world to me if you could do that. Without further ado, let's jump into our first series of commands. Okay, so I have PowerShell loaded over here. And before we kind of go into it, we can look at the overall hierarchy of our organization here. So in this particular example, I'm still on tryhackme's virtual machine. We're just using this particular machine, which is a Windows machine, to do some enumeration, right? So if you were to look at this particular section right here, this part where it says thm.local, this would be in one case or another, it could either be considered the forest or it could be considered the domain. Now, it just so happens to be that there's only one of these here, so this ends up being the domain. But if there were multiple, then that would be the forest, meaning you have multiple domains inside of one giant hierarchy, right? But this particular case, this ends up being our forest and our domain. And then you'll see when we enumerate how that actually plays out. Now, inside of this, there's a lot of, they call them containers, right? So this is a container for computers. This is the container for domain controllers. This is a container for foreign security principles. But then when we get to this one, this is an organizational unit that was made by us, the administrator, and it's called THM. And within this organizational unit, we have other organizational units for each of these various departments. And then within each one of these guys, there are users, right? So if we were to click on THM local, it includes everything right here, which means that we could probably enumerate within THM local like this. And then if we click on computers, it just shows all the list of the computers. And then if we were to click on sales, it'll show the people that are inside of the sales department. And if we click on users, it shows everybody here. So it shows all the people that are here. And interestingly enough, it doesn't show the users that are inside of these individual places. And I think the reason why it was set up that way is so that it can prevent the permissions from the general users database, which has, you know, the administrator in here and all these other things. They don't want the permissions from this group to be applied to all these other people, so they get their own groups and they're inside their own departments or organizational units. So this is kind of how we're going to look at it. We're going to go from the forest to the domain, and then from that we're going to look at individual containers, And then from that, we're going to look at individual organizational units and even the OUs inside of the OUs. It's called nesting. So the IT OU is nested inside of the THM OU. So this is what we're going to do when we go through our enumeration steps with PowerShell. All right, to find the forest, it's actually kind of intuitive. There's like a formula to all of the Active Directory commands inside of PowerShell, and you'll see the pattern as we go through everything, and it becomes fairly easy once you kind of understand what you're doing. So the first one would just be to do Get-ADForest, and you press enter, and it shows you the ADForest. Now, again, in this particular situation, we only have one, right? But if I did this and it was a large organization, it would give me a full list of all of the forests inside the organization. Now, what's important for us to understand is that the name of this is THM local, and the domain itself is exactly the same. So if I wanted to find something by its name, so let's say I wanted to find a forest by its name, I would need to do Get-ADForest, and then you do identity, and then you type in thm.local, and you do it inside of quotes, and you press enter, and it gives you the same information, right? So it's not really any different from the first command. It just finds it by that specific identity. But if you have a large list of domains, or if somebody says, I want you to pull the information on this particular forest, and they give you the name of the forest, this is how you pull the information from that instead of getting the entire full list of the forests, right? So we're going to clear the screen a bit. And then now we're going to look at the other one, which is, again, Get-ADForest. And then now instead you just do find all. And this is one of the things that I wanted to show you. So in this version of PowerShell, this is like an older version of Windows and an older version of PowerShell. In this version of PowerShell, the find all parameter doesn't exist. I just wanted to show it to you so that you know if you're working with a newer version of PowerShell, then it would work for you. But then it's literally the same thing as doing Get-ADForest just by itself, and it would bring all of the forests up for you. So these two commands do exactly the same thing. It just depends on kind of which version of PowerShell or which version of Windows you have that you would be able to get access to that command or not. We're going to run into several commands that aren't going to work on this computer, but they're useful for you to have because they work on the newer versions of PowerShell, and it just makes it a little bit easier to enumerate certain things, as you'll see in a little bit. And then what we can do if we wanted to do something really kind of complicated and complex, but achieve the same type of result, is that we could create a little bit of a script that will do all of those things for us. So in this particular case, I'm just going to do it for you. Let me just zoom out so I can make sure I have my notes open. And from here, I'm going to create this thing for you, and then you'll see that it essentially does the same thing. It's just a little bit more complicated to pull off. So I'm going to type it up, and then you'll see what it is. Okay, here we go. So this particular thing was an error because I'm so used to typing in Python, where in Python you actually put a space between for each. And in this situation, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to just have these two words together just like this right here. And so let's go view this from the very, very top. So what we did was we created an empty forest variable. And then we created a domains variable that assigns Get-ADDomain, which is basically the next command that we're going to be working with. And then inside of that, or after that, we created a for loop that said for each domain that is inside of the domains, I want you to do this, meaning the forest is going to be plus or equal to the Get-ADForest command. And then we're looking for the identity of the domain's name. And then you type forest just onto the screen just so it can print that variable for you, and then it literally gives you the same exact output that we got previously. But again, if you're working with an older version of PowerShell and you wanted to do get all, so this is basically what this does. So it's like instead of saying find all, you're doing the manual enumeration by creating this little script. And then so if you would have typed forest and there were multiple domains in here, or multiple forests essentially, then you would have gotten that. And then at the very bottom here, it says for each forest in forests, write host. Basically, this is a command to print onto the screen. The forest name is the forest and then the name. So forest name, and then we have thm local dot name, which implies that that's the name of the forest. But this is a manual enumeration to find all of the forests instead of doing the Get-ADForest find all, right? So I gave you this just in case you're working with an older version of PowerShell and you need to manually enumerate all of the forests inside of your specific industry, your specific company. So now we're going to move on to enumerating domains. Let me get a hold of this. Now we're going to move on to enumerating domains. So let's clear the screen up and we'll look at our next series of commands. All right, so if we do Get-ADDomain and do a simple filter with an asterisk, meaning filter all of them, show me everything, and you press enter, it says that filter doesn't work. So that's because of the current version of PowerShell that I'm on. And there's another version of this where it goes Get-ADDomain and you do filter, and then I would put the name of the forest that I want to look into, and I need to put that inside a squiggly bracket. Forest equals to thm.local, and then I want to look at it inside here. And again, it's going to give me the same issue that for the domain enumeration, filter doesn't work. What's interesting is that filter does work as we go further down the hierarchy, and we can filter in the, I think the users, as we're going through users and maybe even organizational units, we can filter. But when we're doing it for the Get-ADDomain commandlet, unfortunately, filter doesn't work. So the workaround, if you're working with an older version of Active Directory, or excuse me, PowerShell, you would do Get-ADDomain, but then now you're going to look for the object. So as you were saying, where the object in this domain is, you got to do this little interesting thing where it's $, there you go, forest equals to thm local. And so basically you're essentially saying that variable or that name parameter, I think they call it an attribute specifically in Active Directory, they call it an attribute. So you're saying get an ADDomain where the object, where that specific forest object, where that attribute equals to thm local. And if you press that, now we actually get a response, right? So we're getting, because of the current version of the PowerShell that we're using. And this is actually very, very useful. So there's a lot of good stuff in here. It gives us the computer's container. So if you wanted to find everything inside the computer's container, you would have to refer to it by this full path right here. You can get the distinguished name of your specific domain, which is going to be, if you notice, it's added to the end of the computer's container, right? So this distinguished name is going to be added to the end of everything that we're trying to find inside of this domain. And so CN computers, comma, the distinguished name. CN deleted objects, comma, the distinguished name. And then you literally go down the line and it's all exactly that same formula. OU, organizational unit for domain controllers, comma, the distinguished name. And then we come down here and then we see that we have several other ones that might be pretty useful to us, which is the user's container, comma, the distinguished name. And then we have the CN, the system container, excuse me, comma, the distinguished name. What you'll notice is that that THM container, the one that I showed you earlier, is not here. But if we were to look at the formula for this, so if I did the OU equals THM and then did DC THM and DC local, which means that this is the forest and then this local would end up being the current domain that we're in. And that's how you can kind of analyze this a little bit, is that first DC is for the forest and then the next one is for the local forest, the local domain that you're in. Combined THM local ends up being the domain, but if you remember, this also showed up when we ran the get-forest command. So in other organizations, it may not be thm.local as the forest. It may just be thm or whatever. It might be United States, Ukraine, United Nations, Asia, whatever. You know what I mean? They have like different forests, or it might be different states, whatever. But they have different forest names. And then when you get inside the domain, it'll give you that .local, and it'll say, you know, California.LA, California.Beverly Hills, California.Orange County, something like that. And that would end up being the various domains inside of that forest. And then from there, you get to find the formula for finding containers. And that's also very useful. Containers can also be called organizational units. It's interchangeable. It's just that containers have this CN. What is that? What is this called when you shorten something? I forgot. I'm drawing a blank. Organizational units have OU. Containers have CN. I'm so upset that I'm drawing a blank on like one of the simplest words ever. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. But yeah, that's kind of how you look at it. And then so if you can't find it based on CN, then you will be able to find it based on OU. As long as you have that name, the full name for it, then you can find it. And the way that we can actually do that, just to kind of make sure what it is. So if I go to here and I just look at the properties of whatever that organizational unit is, the name is literally on it, right? And it doesn't really have much information on the managed by or anything like that, but it just gives you the name that you can search for if you wanted to search for an organizational unit. You just need to know that if it's inside another place, if it's nested inside another OU, acronym, that's the freaking word. Acronym is when you shorten something. Jeez. So OU is the acronym for organizational unit, CN is the acronym for container. So you just need to know what the actual name of the thing is inside its properties, and if it's nested inside another one. And so in this particular case, we looked up our domain, and for our domain, I'm going to move this to the side a little bit so it's easier to move between my monitors and stay zoomed in. And for our individual domain, we were able to find all of the containers inside of it. So this is what it actually looks like. I'm going to give you one more command inside domains, and then from there we're going to go to the actual finding of the organizational units. So there is another command that should essentially do the same thing where we did with the Get-Object. And let's see if this works. I don't remember if identity works inside. It does. So great. So you remember how identity didn't work inside of the Get-ADForest? Now it works here. So you don't have to necessarily do the where object, you know, $, underscore dot forest equals THM local. You literally just do identity is THM local. It makes it so much simpler, obviously. So this gives us the same exact output as the other one, where we just do Get-ADDomain, identity THM local, and now we got all of the information about our containers, about the distinguished name of our specific domain that we're in, and now we can go and further enumerate this whole thing by our distinguished name and everything that we want to find inside of our organizational units. All right, so let's look at some interesting things here. So Get-ADOrganizationalUnit, and you can do filter, asterisk, and now this should actually give us, there you go. So the filter parameter didn't work when we were enumerating domains, but it works now when we're enumerating the organizational units. And what I want you to remember is that it's because of the version of PowerShell that I'm on. I'm pretty sure that if you had a newer version of Windows and a newer version of PowerShell, that filter would work if you were enumerating the domains, that filter parameter. Now, if it doesn't work, then you have the backup so you know how to enumerate in other ways. But now at least you know how to enumerate this way. And so in this case, we're going to go at the very, very top because it gives us the main organizational units, okay? And I think there could even be something called Get-AD and I want to try that before I share it with you, but I know for a fact that this one works. So if we do Get-ADOrganizationalUnit, it'll give us all of our organizational units from the very top. And we have the domain controllers at the distinguished name. Look at this. So domain controllers, comma, DC, THM, DC local. And so that gives us the domain controllers. Then we have, now we actually see the THM organizational unit that includes all of our other stuff. And that's OU, THM, and then DC, THM, DC local. And then if we go further down, we'll see that everything that's inside this, everything that's been nested inside of that, now just has that same formula, right? And then you just do OU management, and then OU, THM, DC, THM. You see, it's like, it's very simple, honestly. Like once you kind of understand the formula, it's like, oh, okay, I get how they just nest things inside of the other stuff. And so marketing is inside THM local. Sales is inside THM local. So now we actually have all of the organizational units that we can find. Oh, I didn't need to zoom out. We have all of the organizational units inside of our domain, right? So we went over here and we did Get-ADOrganizationalUnit and we filtered it by the everything. So when you do filter asterisk, it shows you everything that's inside of this particular domain that we're in. And then now what you can do is you can kind of hone in on it a little bit. And you can try to find individual ones based on their name, for example, right? Or based on the stuff that's inside of the THM OU, for example. So let's do that. Okay, so we have the command that should work. That's a little bit, that would be for the newer versions of PowerShell, which would be the search base. So filter everything inside of the search base, OU, THM, DC, THM, DC local, and it should bring you everything outside of that. But now in this case, we have to do filter everything where the object name equals THM. And now it gives us just the information of that THM domain. Unfortunately, it doesn't give us everything inside of the OU THM, and so it only gives you that specific name of THM. Now, if I do the distinguished name as my parameter right here instead of just name, and then give that the full path, then it should give us distinguished name, and then this one, it should give us the full list of organizational units that are inside of the THM organizational unit. So if we do OU equals THM, and then DC equals THM, and then DC equals local, and that should give me the full list, right? No, it doesn't. It actually still gives me this whole thing. So it's unfortunate. I'm going to try to see if I can find a command that will actually give me the full thing, and let's see what we can find here. Yes, so unfortunately I was not able to find anything that would do what we want to do in accordance to what that search base command kind of does. So that one is going to, for me at least, it's not going to work, but it will work for you if you have a higher version of PowerShell. I think 3.0. I think the one that I have is lower than PowerShell 3.0. So that's why it's not working. But if you do have something that's higher than that, then this simple command of Get-OrganizationalUnit, let me make sure I'm on this screen right here. This simple command of Get-OrganizationalUnit, filter everything, and then do a search base. That part doesn't work over here. And then the search base in this case would be DC equals THM, and then DC equals local, and then you would do that, and then it would show you everything. But unfortunately, it doesn't. And You could even do this where you would do get all of the organizational units with OU equals THM inside of that domain, right? Then you could do that and it would show you everything that would be inside that. Unfortunately, it doesn't work here because I don't have the updated version. So this is it's kind of it's like a weird thing to be able to run this and try to teach in a video and then say, yeah, it doesn't work, but it's only because it doesn't work for this reason. And you'll see that the other commands can use things like, as you saw previously, like we can use filter when we were going through the forest, and then when we got up, we could use filter, and now we can use filter inside the, I think it was, yeah, it was the OU, but I don't think we can do, let me see, let me remind myself again if we could use filter inside the Get-ADDomain, filter everything. No, it doesn't show. Okay, so filter doesn't work for Get-ADDomain, but if I do Get-ADOrganizationalUnit and then filter everything, it'll show me everything. So certain parameters for older versions of PowerShell don't work, but if you have a newer version of PowerShell and you run these, there's a very, very high likelihood that it's going to work for you. And I would very much love it that if you do have a higher version of PowerShell, higher than 3.0, if you could run them and make sure that they do actually work, and then come back and leave a comment and say, yes, this actually does work, that would mean the world to me. But I'm kind of operating based on the fact that I don't have a newer version of PowerShell, and that's why it's not working. But so we went through several commands so far. We've gone through the Get-ADForest, and then we've gone through Get-ADDomain, and now we've gone through Get-ADOrganizationalUnit, and now we're going to, actually, you know what, there's one other thing that I do want to check before we move on to getting users and computers. Okay, so it seems that for getting stuff inside of containers, we no longer, I guess there is no container inside of a container, so I guess we wouldn't really worry about Get-ADContainer. But what we can do is use the various other commands that are available to get users that might be inside of containers, or we can get computers that might be inside of containers, or we can get objects that could be inside of containers. So what we're going to do is we're going to go look at the various versions of pulling things outside of OUs and outside of containers. Okay, so the very first one is Get-ADUser filter everything, and now we have all the users, okay? And this is just like a small group of the parameters that you can run, or attributes, excuse me. It's a small group of the attributes that you can find when looking at a user. If we were to minimize this, and we can go to view here, and we'll do advanced features, and then go to THM, and then go to the sales department and look at Christine, and we look at Christine's properties, there's something called the attribute editor. And then inside the attribute editor, you can find all of the attributes that could be set for Christine. And so that includes the, let's see, the code page, I guess. I don't know what that would be, but we have her distinguished name, which is CN Christine, inside of the OU sales, inside of the OU THM, inside the CTHM, so on and so forth. And then we have the given name, so we can filter by her given name. We can filter by a lot of these things. So if these things were set, you could actually pull this attribute and list it onto the screen and actually get that information. So in this particular case, let's see if there's something called, yeah, so this, I hope it works, because the last time that I did this, it wouldn't print this information onto the screen for me, the when changed and when created. So I really hope that it actually does work, and I would want to see that information as we go through our exercise here. So, and what I'm going to do is just kind of shrink this down a little bit so it can be a little bit more manageable and we can actually see everything that's on the screen. Okay, so now I want to clear this screen. So we do have, so for example, we have her distinguished name that's on here. We have, she's enabled as a user. If she was not enabled, this would be false. Her given name, we have the actual name, so the given name and the actual name are the same in this case, but it could be different. She's a user object class. Her GUID is this. Her SAM account name, SAM is for where things get stored as far as usernames and passwords would be concerned. Her SID, security ID, is here, and her principal name, which would be her, essentially her email, it seems like. But it's Christine at THMLocal, and that's what you would look for if you're trying to find this person or try to email them within your individual domain, or just trying to get them to log in. There's a few ways that this could be useful. The principal name, if you have multiple Christines, the principal name would be different, right? If you have multiple Christines, the given name might be different. So in this particular case, we only have one version of a person, so it kind of is just giving you everything as the same value. But these things could be changed if you have multiple Roberts, right? So that's the whole idea here, is that this specific thing, the principal name as well as their given name, could be completely different, simply because of the fact that you have multiple people, and so you have to do that. And a lot of companies do Robert, and then they will do their last name as the character. So like Robert S would be the full thing at THMLocal, and then the given name might be Robert S. If you have two Robert S's, I guess, then it would be something else, and you would give them a different name, right? So that's neither here nor there. So Get-ADUser filter everything. That shows us all of the users that we have. Now, for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to just do this, but I'm not going to actually output it. So you can do Get-ADUser filter everything, and then you can do export CSV. So export CSV, which means it would actually export everything into a CSV file on our, let's say, users, and then I'll say users.csv, like that, and do that. And now if I went and looked at our, or I could just do it manually, right? So I could do dir, see where we are, go back to cd, oh, I already know where we are. So cd, my gosh, what's happening here? Go here and do dir. Now we see that we have a CSV file called users, and the entire output of what would have been on the screen is now going to be inside that CSV file called users right here, right? So you could do this if you have a lot of people and you just want a specific, OU to be output onto the screen. And then what's really nice about this is that we can get specific fields instead of just everything. We could get Get-ADUser, and then you would filter everything that is here. It would be, let's see, for example, I wonder if properties would work in this case. So let's see if properties would work. Okay, properties does work, and it does show us everything. So when you do properties everything, you can now see all of the properties for each individual user, which is actually very useful because now you know what to search from, right? So now I have everything about Christine. I have her, let's see, I have her created time, and maybe that's why it wasn't working for me before, because it's not under when created, it's under created. But her when created is also the same, so that's really annoying actually. But we have all of this information now, right? So we have literally every attribute that could be available for this person that we can now pull to the screen. So for example, I will do the name, I will do the created, and then I will do her, what is that final thing, where it was her user principal name. So I can run the same exact command, but instead of properties everything, I can do, actually I can do properties everything, and then what I'll do is I'll select from all of those properties the name, the when created, and the when, we'll do when, come on, when changed, and then we will also do the user principal name. And just like that, it prints it beautifully onto the screen, and we have our when created, when changed, and their principal name. And administrator doesn't have it, guest doesn't have it, Kerberos ticket getting ticket user doesn't have it, but everybody else does have it. And that's actually very, very useful. And so from this now you can do the same exact thing. You could do this, and then you could either do export CSV the way that we did before, or you could even do this little trick right here where you just do ... like two of those signs right there. Let me actually, I'll do this to make it a little bit easier. I don't know if you could see that, but I'll rerun the command so you could kind of see it. And then from here, we're just going to put it into C, what is it? Let's do quotes C, and then we'll do users, and then we'll do users2.csv, and then press enter. And now since we're inside the users, we can see that we have two users files, and this was the command that we ran. So we ran basically the same thing. We selected everything that we wanted to select, and then we just did this as our export command instead of doing export CSV. And it makes it a little bit easier. So it's a little bit shorter of a command that you can run, and now you can export everything that you want to export into a file. And so this just goes essentially kind of down the path, and you can essentially search for anything at this point, knowing that you have all of these users. So now let's say I want to filter for the people who are enabled, right? So this was a big thing that people kind of want to see, is that I want to see just all the active users. And so enabled has only two values. It's either true or false. And so in this case, it would be select their person's name, their principal name, and we want, what is it, when created, and we'll do when changed, and print that out into the screen. This is why it doesn't work. This is the part that is kind of annoying for me, where it's like, okay, well, it worked the other way. Why isn't it working for this way? So what if I just do created as the parameter? Yeah, it still doesn't give me the value. That part's kind of annoying, but it does show that these are the enabled users. And if we wanted to actually verify that, we can just pull that enabled path when we say select, and then it shows onto the screen. Look, the person, these are all enabled. So these are all enabled users that we have. And if I just run this one more time, and then instead of running enabled true, I will run enabled false, then it should show me the people who are not enabled, which is the guest account and the Kerberos ticket getting ticket, excuse me. That account, these two are not enabled. So you can filter, instead of filtering everything, you can add a filter where you actually filter, where you say, okay, well, I want this, so on and so forth to be here. And maybe I can even do this when I can do when created as a field and see if that brings me anything. And it doesn't bring me anything. So that doesn't have any information. But if I do when created as true, maybe that'll give us something. No, it doesn't. So I think it can't be an equal true or false for when created because it doesn't have it. But if we do, so if we run the command that we had that actually gave us something. So let's go back to our series of commands, and it was, which one? It was when created, when changed, their principal name. I think it's this thing where we had properties everything. Maybe it was because I didn't select properties everything. So that might be the reason why that didn't come for me. And so now that we have this, I can do when created and put the 6/14/2022. Maybe that's something that we could do. That our filter, instead of being everything, the filter could be show me when the person was created equals to, what is it, 6/14/2022. And run it like that, and then close that off and run that, and it doesn't give me anything. So let's see how I can do that. Okay, so here's what I've learned, and I just wanted to share this with you just so you have it, and then for future reference, you can do whatever you need with it. From what I understand, everything that has been created inside of Active Directory is done in UTC. So it doesn't matter with your local time zone or these specific outputs right here. So these outputs don't look to be UTC. And this is what UTC formatting looks like. And the idea here is that since each individual person might have a different timestamp and you want to find all the people from July 11th, for example, the idea is to do their when created date to be greater than or equal to the UTC of what it started, and when created is less than this. So you basically give two times. You give it the midnight hour from one day to the midnight hour in the next day. And then you say everybody that was created between these two ranges, so greater than this place and less than that place. I want all of these things. I want everybody that was created between these two ranges to show up. Now, in my version of PowerShell, it didn't work. So there was a way that I learned that you can convert the local time to UTC time by doing convert to UTC as a command. But again, my version of PowerShell does not have that. So this is just an option for you that if you also see things that are output like this and you want to find a range of people, then what you would do is you would take that date and take it from 12 a.m. So 12, 12 colon 00 colon 00 a.m. And that would be the starting. And then you would convert that into UTC and it would give you a string that will probably look very similar to this. And then you would use that as your greater than or equal to value. And then you make sure you include and then go back to again when created is less than or equal to yada yada yada, and get all the properties from it and then select everything from it. So that would be the workaround to this that I can think of. So from there we would then be able to get an output onto our screen, but unfortunately my system doesn't have access to those things. So moving on to the next command that we have here. So we covered how to find all the users. We found out how to pull individual fields from them and transfer that into a exportable CSV. We also found out how to get all of the enabled users by filtering for enabled equals true. And then we can filter again by just showing their there's actually it's everything after that is kind of the same, so it doesn't really change much anymore. As long as you know what you're trying to pull from, then it kind of just does it for you in that capacity. So if we wanted to, we'll do as like a last command just so you can kind of see what this would end up looking like. Is it would be Get-ADUser, filter everything, properties, everything, and then from here we're going to select the name, the when created, the when changed, and we'll do enabled just to see if they're enabled or not. And then there's a little format that you could use if you didn't want to output into a specific file, and if you just want to look at it onto the screen, but you kind of want to see it nicely, right? So you can do, I'll do another one which is pretty useful, last logon date. And then so this is the last option. It's called outgrid view. And what this does is when you press enter, it actually opens up a new window for you. And then inside that new window, you kind of get to see everything clean like this. So it's a much cleaner version of this. And then this can now be changed. So you can kind of change this, you see? You can organize these things and you can do only the people that have been enabled and then remove all the ones that are not enabled. And then you can look at all the ones that have logged in a while or the ones that have never logged in, right? So these are the out grid view is kind of a quick search method without actually exporting anything onto the system in any way. And that pretty much covers the Get-ADUser. So we've covered the Get-ADForest, we've covered Get-ADDomain, and then from that we're going to look at Get-ADOrganizationalUnits to pull individual organizational units, and then you can do Get-AD Get-ADUser, and then you can filter from that. And so we can do something like so. So let's actually do this. And then what I want to do is I'm going to remove most of these things because I do want to see one other thing. It's actually probably easier for me to, damn it. Now I gotta do this whole thing again and close this out real quick. And so I want to see Get-ADUser and then filter everything and filter everything. And so let's see if they show us their distinguished name, which is Robert inside the OU sales department, so on and so forth. So if I do, let's see. Okay, great. So the search base actually does work when we're looking for AD users, or at least in this version of PowerShell. So if I wanted to find everybody inside the sales department, I would do Get-ADUser, filter everything, so show me all of their stuff, or not, excuse me, not all of their stuff, it's show me all of the users. If you do properties, everything, then it'll show you every property or every attribute related to each one. But you're going to do filter everything, meaning I want all of the users that are inside of this search base. And if you remember, when we tried to do search base for OUs, it didn't work, right? So this is how I know that the commands actually do work. It's just that because it's an older version, it's kind of giving us some issues when we're trying to enumerate certain pieces. But if we look at the search base and we look at the sales inside of the THM, inside of the whatever, this domain controller in Forest, then we can see that we have all of the users that show up. And then from here, we can run the same exact command, but instead of looking at it this way, we can do our select, and then from there, give me their name, give me their when created. For this, I probably would need to do properties everything. So since I'm doing a select, I'm going to do properties everything because I do want to see all the stuff actually be populated. And from here, let's make sure that all of this is done right. When created, and what else do we want? We want to see if they're enabled. We want to see what their user principal name is. And what else do we want to see about these people? We want to also see, let's say we want to see their SIDs too. And we do that. And now it shows everything that we selected specifically about the people inside of that group specifically. So we have Sophie created at this time, enabled, yes, user principal name is such and such, and then we have this as such. And then if we wanted to give it even a nice little thing, we would just do out grid view, and then we would get it into a grid like this, and then we would be able to analyze it like that. So the search base parameter actually does work in this case when we're trying to go through users, when we're trying to pull users from a specific organizational unit, which is nice. I'm glad that certain things are at least working. So now let's go into finding all the computers, and then we can also look at all the objects. All right, so Get-ADComputer, as you probably already guessed, and if I filter everything, let's see if that works. That does work. So now we have a list of all of the computers, and it gives us the distinguished name of all of these things, and it gives us the container that they belong into, which is the CN computers, right? So if this is Claire's computer and it's inside the CN computers, then we can also go ahead and search everything inside of CN computers as a search base. So if I do filter everything, properties, everything, and then I want my search base to be this, which would be the CN computers, and we'll just copy and paste this real quick and show that. It shows us everything. It gives us all of the properties of all of these machines. And so this is Claire's computer's properties, and it shows you everything that there is to know about this particular computer, whether or not it's been set, so on and so forth. And so from here, you can also just kind of pull this up, right? So you can select these individual properties and then go through them. So that is the way that you would be able to pull Get-ADComputers. And then there's something called Get-ADObject that should also give us various sets of stuff. And look at all these objects. And so these are different objects specifically, which includes users, and it includes computers, and it includes servers, and includes everything here. So what you'll notice is that we have the container of Bob inside research and development, and then we have his the remainder of his distinguished name, right? So it works for the actual users. So objects could be users. They could also be PCs that you see over here. They could also be, what else do we have? We got servers right here. See, it's actually very, very useful to be able to try to find things like this so that you can at least see what the situation is over here, right? And all I did was objects and then filter everything, and I could probably do properties, everything. And if I do that, look at that. Now it's going to be this long output that we have, which is not fun, right? So it's going to keep printing until it's all done. So one great way that you can do this, you can either export it using the, and let me just clear the screen real quick so you can see what I'm typing, because I'm at the bottom of the screen here. So you can run the command that we just ran, including all of the properties, and then you could do export using those two arrows pointing forward, or you could just do the out grid view, and it'll show you visually on the screen. And this is going to be a much larger output, so you can see everything here now. So we have their auditing policy that's been established, their canonical name, or canonical, whatever how you want to pronounce that. You have their CN, their actual name of their container. You have when they're created, their timestamp, their creation time. We have a lot of things. I can zoom out here, and I would have to drag this from the bottom right here, and it gives you everything that there is to know about these people, and you can look at all of this information like that. So this is how you would output all of the objects onto your screen in a little bit of a more legible format than what you saw previously with that the stuff that was output onto the PowerShell terminal. And the very last thing that I want to show you is pulling group policies. And believe it or not, it's actually fairly simple, as you can kind of already determine, right? So the GPO is what group policy object stands for. And so GPO, get GPO. You just press enter, and then it says which GYD do you want to pull. So you would actually need to give it its group ID. So in this case, what we want to see is all of them, for example. So we'll do get GPO all, and now it gives me all of my group policies. And so I have, in this particular computer, there's the default domain policy, the RDP policy, and then there's the default domain controller policy, and that seems to be it. I only have 3 group policies that have been created on this specific domain. So what I can do if I want to get details about, let's say, the RDP policy, so I would do get GPO, and I can do a few different parameters. I could do ID and search by its ID. I can do display name and search by its display name. So let's do that. We'll do display name, and it's going to be RDP policy. And then you do that, and there we go. So we have the RDP policy specifically. And then maybe we can even do properties, everything, and see if we can get all of that. Okay, so properties does not work with GPOs. Now we know. So this is something that you can kind of be aware of, right? So get GPO display name RDP policy, and it'll show me what the actual policy itself is. It'll show the ID of it, it'll show the owner who created it, the domain name that it belongs to, and its versions, and so on and so forth. So that is how you can pull a specific one, and then you can select attributes from it. So that's the other thing where we could just go to just pull RDP policy, and then I'll do select display name, display name, and I'll do domain name, and I'll do ID, and I'll do creation time, right? Do that, and it gives me just those series of information. And of course I can do get GPO, and I will do all, and then same thing, right? Select, and just for the interest of time, we'll do select display name, and it'll only print the display names of all of the GPOs that we have available right now. And then you can even do the same thing, and I presume you should be able to do an outgrid view, outgrid view, like that. And now it brings it up into our viewer outside of the terminal, which is, again, pretty user-friendly, and it's nice to do. So you know how to get all of the GPOs, group policies, you know how to pull each individual one with its display name, and then select specific attributes from it. And then you can do, what else could we do here? Let's see if we can do a linked object. I feel like this version of PowerShell won't let me do it, but there's something called, let me clear the screen here. There's something called Get-GPO linked object that you can do. And let me see if I just do all. Yeah, linked object is not recognized as a name of a commandlet, function, script file, or whatever. And if check if it even exists. So it doesn't exist in this particular machine, but it will give you all of the linked objects to a group policy, meaning all of the devices that were linked to it, or maybe all of the organizational units that were linked to it, all the people that are linked to it. It can show you that. And then we can do get GP file security, and I think this might, yeah, this doesn't exist either, but it would be the group policy file security that you would need to, after the fact, include the path of the file. So it needs to look like this. For example, it would be this is kind of the sample command here, where you have get GP file security, give the path of the file that you want to look at, and then the group policy that you want it to be compared against. Or if you just left it with the path and you only just looked at what that would be, it would just give you the group policy for this thing. But again, we don't have GP file security. Then the next one would be get GP registry value, which gives you the value of the registry for this. Now in this particular case, we actually have something that asks us, so it means that we actually can get some kind of information. So I have a sample GID here, and the key is what I'm interested in. So let me see what the key is supposed to be for this. Okay, so the key, now that I understand what it is, we can go and try to find based on the group policy's name itself. So it would need to be the one that we just looked at. I think is this one, right? So the 84, is that what it is? Yeah, 84F9. That's the one that we just looked at. So we would need to go into the registry. And so let me see if I have the registry on a thing at the bottom. I don't, so we can just go here and we do registry and open up the registry editor. And specifically what we want to look at are the group policies. So let me see if I can find the group policies real quick. Okay, so it's going to take me forever to actually find the key for this particular policy, because I have to rummage around and try to find out where it's been installed and where it's been, where I would be able to locate it. But a key looks like this, just so you know. That's what a key looks like, and that's something from the registry editor. And since we're going to pull something from the registry. So that's what we're doing, right? So we're doing get GP registry value, so the group policy registry value. It's going to ask for a specific one, the actual key for it, and this is what the key is, and then it's going to ask for the ID that you want to search for, and you would give it the ID. In this particular case, I don't know where this one has been stored, for example, or RDP, that one might be a little bit easier to find because it's remote desktop. So, but the default domain controller policy, I currently don't know where that would be installed on this computer, or where I would find the registry for that. So it's a little bit tougher to find. But then in that situation, we would just be able to kind of run the get GP registry value and be able to find the registry value for that specific group policy. So that is what's available to us in this particular case. And then the very last one is going to be the Get GPO report. And Get GPO report, is it working on this one? Okay, it does work on this one. So maybe we could try to pull it from this specific ID and see what we can find here. And then report type, you need to give it some kind of formatting. So it's going to be XML. And it's going to take a quick second, and then it's going to output everything onto the screen for you for the group policy object report, and it looks just like this. And so this is what this would look like, and this is a very, very robust output, as you can tell, but you would be able to get the group policy object report. And so we could probably run this and do ID and do that, and then from here I would be able to do, I think it's called report type is the other thing. So report type is going to be XML. And from here, I can output into reports.xml and press enter, and it should actually generate that report for me. And there it is. And so now we have a report.xml. And now I can go into my file explorer and pull up that report that's been stored for me in our local disk users, and it's an XML. It's going to open up inside Internet Explorer because XML is kind of like a version of HTML, just a little bit more fancy, I guess we can call it. It's just a more advanced version of it. It's going to ask because it doesn't recognize it, so it's going to say, do you trust this thing? And so for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to add it, and then we're going to ask later. And so this is what it would look like. This is what it looks like inside of a browser, and just like this. So basically same exact information that you saw before inside the terminal, except just a little bit easier to read because it's number one color coded, but from that you also have the domains that I think might even be clickable in this particular instance. It doesn't seem like it wasn't. Well, let's see. Okay, so we can. Got it. Okay, so that's what that means, that you can kind of shrink certain things down and kind of look at the full thing. So if I look at the identifier and I can just click on this and it'll shrink the entire thing. And so now we have the group policy object for our specific, what is it? It doesn't even show us which one that we're looking at. So we need to expand this to be able to look at this. And then you have the identifier in this case that has been this particular ID. And then on this specific domain, so on and so forth. So this is just a kind of a generic approach to trying to find group policies. And we went through some of those commands. So now you have the specific Active Directory. And I don't know if it falls under Active Directory, but it should. Group policies do fall under Active Directory. So now we know how to pull group policies within PowerShell. And just like that, we have wrapped our session for today. All right, so this is what we've gone through today. So we did Get-ADForest, we've covered Get-ADForest, we've done Get-ADDomain, we have done Get-ADOrganizationalUnit, and of course, we have done Get-ADUser, and we have done Get-ADComputer, we have done Get-ADObject, and we did, last but not least, Get-GPO, Group Policy Object. So we have done a large series of commands today, And hopefully you learned some really good things about enumerating Active Directory with PowerShell. I did this for my own education because from what I understand, when you go to a large organization, when you go to an enterprise type of an environment, they have really big forests and domains and a bunch of organizational units for different locations and for different uh, um, what do we call it, groups. So for their roles, right? So there might be an organizational unit for all the managers inside of a specific location, and then you have an organizational unit for all of the objects inside of that specific location. So there could be a bunch of things that you would need to enumerate, and it's just super easy to be able to do it through PowerShell and then just export it into a file instead of having to click through Active Directory, the hierarchical view. The hierarchical view is actually not bad. It's useful when you want to find certain things, I would say. This specific view that you're looking at right here, this is called a hierarchical view. And the group policy management actually even shows in this particular case, it says the forest is THM local, and then you have the domain, which is also THM local. So in this particular case, it actually gives us the specific name of the forest as well as the domain. And so from here, then you can go and use PowerShell to enumerate through the rest of the objects and through the rest of the users and so on and so forth. But if there's a large company, so if they have multiple forests, and then they have multiple domains inside of that forest, and then they have multiple organizational units inside of that domain, and then there's inside of the organizational units, there are more organizational units. When you start looking at stuff like this, it kind of becomes a little bit hectic because you keep doing drop down and then drop down and it just fills this entire sidebar right here, and it's a little bit tough to manage. So when you're looking at a really large company, one of the greatest ways to do it is through PowerShell. And so this is why we did this. And I had to do this for my own studies because some of the jobs that I'm going after require, and these are cybersecurity jobs, by the way. So these are cybersecurity jobs, analyst jobs, information security jobs that want you to be able to know how to do this. And so now we know how to do it. Now you know how to do it. And this is a very, very useful, I can't even begin to tell you how useful this is. But it's a very useful skill set that you can learn how to do by enumerating groups and organizations and forests and domains and so on and so forth inside of PowerShell. All right, so if you got any value from this video, if you learned anything from this video, and hopefully you did, and it actually made your life a little bit easier. If you learned anything from this video, if you got any value from it, please like, subscribe, turn on notification bell, and drop a comment, especially if you were able to confirm some of those commands that I couldn't pull off over here. If you have a newer version of PowerShell and you were able to actually pull off those commands, please let me know if it actually does work. And then just drop a comment letting me know that it works so that I can also rest assured, because I run a Mac and this is a VM that I'm using that's inside of tryhackme, and for purposes of exploitation, their virtual machines are a little bit older so that some of the patches haven't been installed and so on and so forth. So you can actually hack into these machines. But if this was a much newer version of Windows with a much newer version of PowerShell, it would be patched up, and so you wouldn't be able to really exploit this as easily. So that's the reason why tryhackme keeps their Windows machines a little bit more outdated, so that you can actually be able to pull off some of these hacks and these vulnerability tests. But if you do have a newer version of PowerShell, I would very much love it if you could drop a comment if those commands actually did work for you, and just let me know. And apart from that, just by liking and subscribing and turning the notification bell on and commenting, all that stuff helps to get more attention onto the channel. The YouTube algorithm finds us a little bit easier, and we get some better reach for growing the community that we have here. And obviously, if you do subscribe and turn on the notification, you'll actually get notified the next time a video comes out that if you find useful, if you're studying for a cybersecurity analyst or ethical hacker or penetration test, all that stuff, it's useful for you. So it ends up being a win-win situation, and that is always the best type of situation. So that being said, it's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Peace, love, and chicken grease, and I will see you in the next video. Later.